The word of the day for today, Thursday, January 20th, 2022, is yurt. Yurt. It's a noun, and it means a tent-like dwelling of the Mongol and Turkic peoples of Central Asia, consisting of a cylindrical wall of poles in a lattice arrangement with a conical roof of poles, both covered by felt or skins. Yurts have become popular, and awareness of them has grown in the United States in the last 20 years as not always, but in relation to glamping, a way of glamorous camping is what I was referring to there, and a way to get out into nature and achieve some form of chosen social isolation without losing all of the comforts of home. The yurt, though, is used mobily, at least in its original and ongoing use, to be able to travel and have a place as you are herding or moving around the landscape with your family or colleagues or your flock. It is apparently relatively easily transportable. It's durable, and if you have the people, a family, for instance, and I'm pulling this from our second example of the word on dictionary.com. If you have a family, you can erect a yurt in less than an hour. Well, a Mongolian family can break down and erect a yurt in less than an hour. So if you're well practiced. And I'll come back to that in a moment. The origin was interesting to me because first of all, because the word yurt was borrowed from Russian, yurta, and before that, yurta came from an uncertain Turkic source, meaning home or abode. So kind of, jumped into Russian and back out again. Another interesting thing from the origin is that Turkic languages had been in the past thought to be part of a language family called the Altaic family, which included Mongolic, Tungusic, and possibly Japanese and Korean. But, having come to that belief or that understanding, the current or contemporary belief is that the similarities between those languages and the Turkic languages is because of language contact rather than, as the origin puts it, a common ancestry. Which is interesting to me, right? Languages can have so much contact as a result of all of the factors that generate contact between human beings, right? Because anytime contact is necessitated, communication is also necessary. And so, trading and conquest and all of those things bring languages together, and that's it's interesting to see that how over time how deeply languages can share with one another, so deeply that it can be confusing about whether they originated in the same place or they've just had lots of interaction, contact, and reasons to gain understanding of each other over time, right? And so the languages, yeah. So that was interesting to me. And then finally, in terms of usage, I think in a creative writing context, you can use something like a yurt, right? Like you can imagine what does my character live in, right? If it's a sci-fi thing, if it's the apocalypse, right? How are they living? How are they sustaining their, let's say, a nomadic life? If they're a nomadic lifestyle, maybe they're not in a yurt, but what do they live in? Do they construct something daily, right? How does that create a context for your character's thinking, feeling, etc.? So, for instance, they may have something that is, they may be living in something that is mobile, but is not secure and sturdy, and therefore, they sacrifice. Your character makes a sacrifice of comfort in sleeping and, well, that's it, right? Like sleeping and shelter for mobility. Or they may be stuck with, or at least in their mind, stuck with the more complicated mobile dwelling of their family, right? A more complicated tent, something like a yurt that they end up struggling with every night, and so they end up being less mobile than they want to be, and therefore they're more vulnerable because they want to only put the thing up once, stay somewhere for a few days, and then move on, right? Which creates vulnerability. You can argue, or you can set it up in your narrative, creates vulnerability to other more mobile forces at work in the world. And so, right, so then that sets up an interesting opportunity for other characters to come into that person's sphere. Because on a basic level, an additional member of their party, a friend, an uneasy relationship means you have someone else to help you set up your yurt or yurt-like structure. And so there's one of many reasons you can that character can heap on to the decision to take on a friend who may become, or take on a frenemy who becomes a friend, take on a companion when they prefer to be alone with the challenges of life, and eventually, right. So that practical usefulness of having a companion can be the start of something more interesting for your character. So, and you can use the word yurt, or you can imagine your own type of dwelling that has some of the similar opportunities and limitations. Yurt.